What's going on, guys, and welcome back. We have more pie charts. You guys seem to really like these videos, and I like doing them. Again, all this information is in the spreadsheet down below. The total tops post set championship starting will get updated as soon as we get the top 64 from Botcham, but I do have a running total in a tab for top 4 set championships, and that's what we're here to talk about today. So, without further ado, these are the total top 4s we have found so far through verified Facebook groups, through ink decks, through things like that. So at the time of recording this, we have Bucky discard obviously being the big deck of the format. There is no surprise there. I think anyone who thinks that's a surprise, well, hasn't really been paying attention. So what other decks are popular? Surprisingly enough, Cesu actually falls to 4th. And again, this is a very incomplete list. If you've been on Inkdex, you know that there's a ton of events that currently do not have all 4 of the top 4 revealed. And we have our list. Where are we? All of these events are incomplete right now. I'm writing them down so I can check it daily and cross them off as we get them edited and added into our spreadsheet, so we're not going to miss anyone in that category. So total tops, how many people got their Ursulas? 21 Bucky so far, 14 Ruby Amethyst, 11 Blue Steels. Just going to call it Blue Steel because some play wheel, some don't play wheel. So ignore the word wheel there, just look at the graphic. For the cards, and likewise the Amethyst Steel is in more aggro at this point and less control, so again, ignore the cont at the top of your screen. We do have 9 Cesus only. Again, I do think this number is low right now, and once we get this to fill out by next weekend, I expect this chart to be much more accurate. But the deck tabs also, I have like 60 decks to go ahead and upload into that spreadsheet, so I'm going to be busy these next couple days, but we'll get all that done so you guys can see what cards are people playing, how's the format shifting, what are they going to play, so what can you use to counter them and to beat them. I've actually had a few people in person on Facebook and some comments on videos mentioning that my videos had helped them prepare for set championships, help them test against things, help them play decks. So as a content creator, stuff like that is just amazing for me to hear. It's why we do it. I'm doing this trying to help, and hearing people tell me, hey, you really helped me, really makes me happy and excited to keep doing this and keep giving you guys content. So then we also have Steelsong. Sorry, I'm a little back and forth trying to get everything situated. We do have 4 Steelsongs, and then the 3 Amethyst Steel more aggro type builds. And then you had the Tempo, the Amber Amethyst Hyper aggro, Emerald Ruby anti-meta aggro, if you will, a Ruby Amber Location. Shoutouts Dave. Bug Dave in the comments, guys. His name is David. Let's all tell David to let us see that list. The Ruby Amber Location control list that he almost, it was crazy watching it on stream, almost made it to top 2. Other decks, a Ruby Fossa, a Lemon Lime discard, also rounding out the decks that we have. So 68 total recorded. Again, this number is incomplete, but it is going to continue to grow. If you check back that spreadsheet daily, it's going to keep going up, and weekly I'll do these update videos. I'm not going to do it more than that because it's just going to be a lot. So what decks got their playmats? Well, to little surprise, Bucky discard's still in that number 1 spot with 13, and this means first or second place finishes. Here now is where Cesu really shines. Cesu came through with 8 and jumped all the way up to the second most deck. Then you had the Blue Steel and Ruby Amethyst each with 6. I've heard a lot of people talking about Ruby Amethyst running rampant all over. My set championship that I had gone to, this deck was everywhere. This deck and Cesu were, I guess, and Bucky, they all had a pretty good amount. We had 29 players. I think there was 5 Bucky, there was probably 6 or 7 Ruby Amethyst, and probably about 5 Cesus in the field. Then we also have the Ruby Amethyst and Sapphire Steel, each with 6, like we said. Steelsong comes in then with 3, as well as the Amethyst Steel with 3, and then Tempo and Ruby Fossa each rounding out the end with their 1 tops so far. I also do want to do a video on like the spiciest lists. So I'm gonna go through all these lists and try to pick out like the craziest ones, the spiciest ones, the most unique ones, and just do a video and highlight that, just to show that you can be creative and still do really well in this game. So that brings us to one more pie chart before we go over a few deck lists, and that is the champions. Bucky, Discard, and Cesu Control each come in with 7 wins so far. Ruby Amethyst and Amethyst Steel each with 3. Sapphire Steel, Blue Steel, and Steelsong each come in with 1. Was that right? 1? No, they each come in with 2. Sorry. So 2 for the Ruby Amethyst and the Amethyst Steel. 3, sorry, for those 2 decks. And then 2 for Blue Steel and Steelsongs. So we're actually into a format where it looks like there's 6 decks that can realistically win. If you saw our top 10 video for set championships, these actually were 6 of my top 7 decks. I had Amethyst Steel at 7. I had Tempo in there at number 6, but otherwise, these are 6 of the 7 decks that we picked, and that's really nothing to brag about because 90% of the content creators had at least 5 of these in their top 6. But yeah, so I think it's kind of expected. Nothing too crazy is happening in the format, and I think that's because we've had enough events where it's kind of solved, if you will, and it's going to be interesting when we get to set 5, because we had Pixelborn to figure this format out for the first months before Chicago, so we had that client. But with set 5 and the new cards, we don't. So it's going to take a little longer. It's going to be a little more secretive. It's not going to be just thousands and thousands of games played online and we get to see the meta develop. It's going to be, we have to wait and see it in person. We have to wait and see the results popping up on the computers. It's going to be interesting. I'm excited for it. It's like really old school card games, and it's, on one hand, it feels almost archaic, like we've come so far and yet we're going back over here. But at the same time, it just, I don't know, I love like Yugi Kaiba starter deck format, like just old school back and forth, lots of interaction, long games, lots of turns. You're not blown out by turn 1 type stuff. So I'm really curious to see. Not saying this game is anywhere near as slow as that, but it's just exciting, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So let's go ahead and go over a few deck lists. This one is a Steelsong, and it was actually the Forbidden Mountain player Dick Burns who won 2 events, if I'm not mistaken. They had different names, so I'm going to assume that he won 2 events, and it may look very familiar. It is very, very similar to the list that Zach Bivens played in Chicago. And so we have 2 Cinderellas only, cutting this from the 4 that it used to be just kind of staple as, to play 4 Robin Hoods, 4 Queens. On 2, you have the 4 Smees, this one playing the Ursula. So that's actually a little interesting because I thought the Forbidden Mountain guys had switched over to Piglet instead of the Ursula. So don't quote me on it, but this might be the Bivens list from Chicago completely. I know these, like I said, the Forbidden Mountain guys, a lot of them had gone to Piglet to speed up the deck, and it was working really well. I had a friend who played it at set championships and was really, really close to making it into Top Cut as well. But yeah, so there's a little bit of variance in what you can do with the deck. The other 2 drop, that being that Ursula in this build. Then on 3, you have Ariel, 4 Rapunzel, Robin Hood Queen for 5, rounding it out. So no big Tinkerbells, which makes sense because you have your songs to do all your damage. Playing Pride Lands and Flutes. Again, last format, that was something where it's like you have to pick between Flute, Lantern, Pride Lands, and all of a sudden this format, it's like, no, you got to play both, and it works. None of your characters come in as uninkable, so these are the first 7 cards that are uninkable. We play about 12 more songs typically that are uninkable, so you're under 20. There's a video a while ago that said Steelsong statistically should be able to play like 22 without issues, and I don't necessarily believe that because, you know, statistics don't always work out how they should. With the song lineup being the 1 Bare Necessities, 4 Storm, 4 Rage of the Strength of the Raging Fire, 3 World's Greatest Criminal Mind, the 2 Zeus, the 4 Wheels, and then the 2 Grab Your Swords. So again, nothing really too crazy or spicy here, but Steelsong is one of those decks where early in the format, it's just kind of not the best because this deck thrives when the format settles because it has such a good toolbox that it can build to counter the format. Early in the format, when there's so much fluctuation going on, it's just not quite as good because you're trying to combat the unknown, and it just makes it a little bit harder. That's why you usually see Steelsong like last format, this format, and most likely next format, where they start slow, and then like 2 weeks in, all of a sudden the deck just starts to gain steam and move on forward. So we have to do a Bucky list, guys. I know. We're all tired of Bucky. It's the $800 deck. It's the deck that's figured out. So maybe next time we won't do one, but it's the deck. It's the deck that you have to be ready for. So what do we see people playing? Are they still playing the same cards? Diablo, Robin Hood on 1, Bucky and Ursula on 2, the 3 Aladdins, 4 Diablo, Deceiver of All. She started to see a little bit less play before set championship, and by a little bit less, I mean like a little bit less, not like, oh my god, everyone's cutting her. No, just it wasn't unheard of to cut her, but set championship format, it sure seems like everyone is back on her. And things that they're on too is the 2 biggest fan for Flynn Rider. You see this very common, 3 Jafars, 4 Heroes, Tragic Hero that is, 4 Robin Hood, and 2 Tinkerbells, Hidden Cove in there, 3 Sudden Chill, 4 Storm, 4 Strength, 2 Grab Your Swords, and 3 Brunos. If you're getting ready and you want to play and you want to learn how to play against Steel or Emerald Steel, proxy up this deck list. This is the standard, the cookie cutter, the common, the optimal, the list. Like, maybe I shouldn't say optimal, but at the same time it feels like it because like it's by far the most common list and it just feels optimal, right? The downside to once you get optimal, you can't get complacent because people start to tech for it harder or more specifically, and then all of a sudden you start to need to make slight changes to the deck because you have to combat what people are doing to you. Sometimes the deck is just too good. You leave it the way it is, and it almost feels like that's where Emerald Steel is at this format. So again, if you're looking to test against this deck, this list right here is the perfect testing partner to learn the ins and outs of how the Emerald Steel deck plays. We have a fun one now. Mufasa, Ruby Fasa to be specific. Kind of interesting, playing 7 ones. Typically, Mufasa decks don't like to play a lot of 1s because you don't want to hit them off your Mufasa. The Mulans here coming in with damage to help your Julieta draw, to help your Rapunzel draw, makes a lot of sense. And at least the one you're adding in is 3 Lilos, which is an aggro card. So at least you're adding in an aggro card that if you hit it off your Mufasa, it's a multi-quester. So it's not the worst thing. It's a 1/1 that's going to die, but at least it's going to get you 2 lore in the process. On 2, you also have that Mother Gothel to come in for that draw power, Simba Protective Cub for your bodyguard, and then that Piglet Pooh Pirate Captain. This card is just crazy. It really, really is. On 3, 2 Doc of the 7 Dwarfs, 4 Gastons. Getting characters out for 2 less is just really strong. 2 Julieta for draw. 3 Cesu for big attack, multi-quester. Then you go to 4, you got the Rapunzels. And then on 5, we have Goofy Daredevil. So the evasive 3/4 who quests for 2. Interesting choice. He's a good evasive. He's a very good counter to other cards in the format. If you get Gaston out, you can get Goofy down on 4. Then we also have the Mauis. 4 Mufasas, of course. 2 Tremaine, 2 Medusas. Interesting just to have the 2 Medusas, I guess. But it worked for them. 2 Nessus. So it's a 6 cost. It's a 7/5. It quests for 2. It's a vanilla, but that's a pretty strong stat line, and he's inkable, so interesting card to play, I guess. You know, put him in the spotlight, put him out there. I don't know how much I like vanillas, despite the amazing stat line. Like, it's just a really, really good stat line, and that's what he is. 2 Perditas. I'm not big on this card, this format, but at least when you play it, you can get the character back from your discard for free. As far as every time she quests, your opponent in this format, there's just so many answers to Perdita, especially like any Ruby deck's just going to clear her right away. But if they don't answer her, right, if they don't answer Perdita, this card just goes off and gets you crazy value. So it makes sense. I'm just not the biggest fan of it in the format, just because so many cards do out it that are just naturally being played because they out other cards in the format, like Hiram, like Diablo, and things like that. So then we are also playing the other vanilla at 6. It's not a 7/5. He's a 4/6, but he quests for 3, and that is the Abomination Stitch. 4 Stitch Carefree Surfers, and 2 Maleficent Dragons. Anything that really stands out here, I guess, the 2 Tremaine, 2 Medusas. Medusa feels pretty strong, but I mean, keeping your uninkable counts down, right? Like, you're at 13, you don't want to go too much higher. It makes sense. What other ones? Maleficent Dragon, but at the same time, if you see it, it's ink. You usually aren't going to get to that 8 ink. You just play the 4 to increase your chances of hitting it off the Mufasa, but you don't have to play the 4. So again, it makes sense why you maybe cut it down. The Goofy's a good tech just for the format as well. Outside of that, I don't think there's anything too crazy in there. Playing the 1 Bodyguard Simba, I get it. Definitely want to protect some of your cards from being hit when you don't want them to, like your Lilo, like your Piglet, especially like your Gaston, like your Doc. These cards to help get out the bigger characters for less ink. So that Bodyguard just helping let you do that. And now we have one more deck to talk about, and that is Cesu. So, Cesu. Anything crazy going on here? What are we doing differently? Looking at the items. The 1 Fishhook, I do like Fishhook. It's a tech option that you can or don't have to play. 1 Lucky Dime's interesting. I guess watching a lot of games, like, it does feel like sometimes Dime isn't needed, but other times, man, Dime is needed. I get that it's an uninkable 7 cost, but just the 1 Dime is a little different. 4 Quill, seeing that in there. Again, this isn't Blue Steel, where you might have to debate on the Great Stone Dragon instead. Just the 1 Ice Block. Personally, I feel like this card is too good not to play it at more. Like, single-handedly in round 3, this is the card that just ruined me. Or I shouldn't say single-handedly. This card plus Brawl and Medusa, because, like, getting my Tinkerbells outed by Medusa, getting Robin Hood outed twice because of the Brawl and the Ice Block. Like, this card put in so much work. I really couldn't see myself playing less of it, I guess. But what are they on? 3, 3, 1, 1. So that's 8, 9. Only 17 uninkable cards, so they went low on uninkable cards, and it worked for them. They got a first place finish. I believe this one was the first place. It's for sure a top 4. Yeah, first place, 42 player event. 17 uninkables. Again, this is usually a deck that it's not uncommon to see like upwards of 22. As far as the items go, Lucky Dime, I get it. Ice Block though, I really 2 or 3 personally. Just me, I guess. Fang Crossbow, that's an interesting one. So you can exert it and pay 2 and give -2 to a character. Okay, so that's part of why they're playing the Ice Block at 1, I guess, is because they have an inkable version of it. Downside is you do have to pay the 2 ink. So it makes sense. You can banish Chosen Dragon character. I guess in the mirror match, takes out a Maleficent Dragon. What about Cesu? Yeah, Cesu's Dragon. They're not playing Little Cesu, so we can't check her. But takes out the dragons, though. That makes sense, too. Vitalisphere, getting the Rush and +2. Again, just sometimes you really need that on, like, your Hiram or your Grandma Tala, which we actually see Queen of Hearts here. So I'm not surprised by this at all, because sometimes if you're playing Bucky, you'll get greedy in this matchup and quest your Bucky. So personally, I wasn't doing it, and I probably could have won a couple of those games because I got so close had I quested my Bucky. But it's just that moment of, do they have Queen of Hearts, right? And then it just stinks because sometimes you don't see your Bucky and then things go sideways. So it's like, when you had it, I could have went for it. But I don't necessarily disagree with the call because, again, I don't know. I played it safe. I played it slow, and it didn't work out for me. But seeing it at 4 makes you feel a little bit better that she is seeing some play. 3 Judy hops just to help get rid of opponent's items or hit your own items to be able to draw a card. So it's kind of like Hiram, but not as good. Grammatala, Hiram, Maui, Medusas, 4 Cesus. So 1 ice block, 1 dime, but 4 Cesus. Interesting choice there. I'm guessing it's because only the 1 B prep and 3 1 jump, and how far too. Usually that's like 4 4 3 or 4. Putting the Cesu at 4 though instead. I guess I understand it because it gives you the board presence, right? Unlike Be Prepared where you wipe everything, Cesu gives you a really, really powerful board presence. So it makes sense. It's just a little bit different than some of the other lists. Tamatoa, Maleficent, Brawl, all pretty standard 4 ofs. So I don't think the format's looking too crazy yet. But again, we had Ruby Fasa, Amber Ruby locations, Emerald Ruby anti-meta aggro, Amber Amethyst hyper aggro. Like, these rogue decks are still performing. You don't have to play one of the big 4 decks or Steelsong to be able to win, or to be able to do really well, I should say, to win your Ursulas. So it's kind of fun. I really do like where the format is at. Let me know down below, how do you feel about the format? Do you like it? Do you dislike it? How do you think it's going to progress moving forward? Me personally, again, I think Cesu's going to bump up that pie chart. I think it's just kind of, the information's not all out yet, and Cesu is just one of the decks that's being underreported, we'll call it. But yeah, so this is where we're at. I will see you guys again next week. If you want to check in that spreadsheet down below, any day throughout the week, I update it daily. So until next time, guys, take care, and thanks for watching.